The desert did not speak that morning. It held its breath. Talon rode alone, the sun already carving shadows into the canyons though the hour was young. His horse moved slow, careful with its hooves on the cracked, flaking earth. A hawk circled overhead, crying out once, then vanishing into the blue. Ahead, nothing stirred. The sky stretched wide and unblinking. It was the kind of silence that pressed into a man's ribs. He had buried a fox that morning, small, limp, with a belly caved in by hunger. Its fur was gray and curled like ash. He had not meant to stop for it, but something in the stillness had made him kneel. Maybe because no one had before. Maybe because he'd once knelt beside smaller graves. He crested the rise, where a jagged boulder leaned like a crooked tooth, and that's when he saw them. Two shapes. Slumped. Still. The wind shifted, lifting the edge of a blanket that wasn't there. He dismounted wordlessly, stepping soft, his hand brushing the knife at his waist. One figure stirred, just barely. A cough, wet and ragged. The other didn't move at all. Women. White women. They looked nearly dead. One lay half-curled, her skin sun-scorched, mouth open and chapped, eyes fluttering behind bruised lids. Her dress was torn at the hem, dusty, and smeared with dried blood. The second woman knelt beside her, upright, rigid, like a dying tree refusing to fall. Her skin was darker, lips cracked, her hands curled into fists over something small and sharp. She stared at him. Not with fear. Not with hope. Just with defiance barely clinging to breath. He said nothing. Slowly, Talon knelt and unstrapped his water skin, holding it out in the open between them. The darker woman blinked. Her grip tightened, then loosened. She didn't move toward him, but she didn't move away either. He placed the water skin in the dust and backed 3 steps. Then he sat. The dark-skinned woman waited, watching for a trap that never came. Then, as if her bones might shatter from the motion, she dragged herself to the water and took a single sip. She didn't guzzle. She swallowed once, then moved to the paler woman and lifted her head gently. She poured the water slow between cracked lips. Talon watched. The pale woman coughed. Her eyes fluttered open, wide and blurred. She saw him. Flinched. Then saw her companion, and held on. They didn't speak. That, more than anything, made him stay. Talon stood, stepped toward them again, and removed the knife from his hip. Not to use it, but to place it gently on the ground between them. Then he turned and walked a few paces off. He set down his pack, unfurled a canvas tarp, and began tying it to a low limb, creating a rough shadow between the boulder and a bent tree. The wind stirred again, this time with heat. The women, after many minutes, crawled under the shade. The darker one pulled the other close, watching Talon the entire time. Her arms were thin, but strong, like roots that had weathered more than one storm. The pale one leaned against her, cradled like something once broken and barely mended. Talon said nothing. When the sun lowered slightly and the heat softened just enough, he approached again. He gestured to his horse. He pointed to the woman who could not walk. The darker one stared. Then, slowly, she nodded. He helped her lift the pale one, who clutched something to her chest, a small bundle wrapped in faded cloth. Not a child. A book. He didn't ask. He let her ride. The darker woman walked beside the horse, limping only slightly. Talon walked ahead. They said no names. No stories. Just moved across the dying land, toward something none of them could yet name. By dusk, the land dipped, and smoke wove like silver threads in the horizon. The Apache village sat folded between bluffs, hidden unless one knew where to look. The horse whinnied low. Somewhere, a dog barked. Children's laughter echoed, then stopped. The moment the 3 figures came into view, the camp changed. Men stood. Women turned to each other in sharp, hushed words. Old Fox emerged first, his long gray braids trailing like rivers over his shoulders. His eyes found Talon, then the women. His expression did not change. Behind him came She Prairie, lips already moving in whispers. No one came forward. Talon led the horse into the circle. The pale woman, Cora, he would learn later, did not lift her gaze. The darker woman, Willa, kept her arm around her. Talon dismounted. Helped them down. He gestured toward the medicine tent. No one opened it. Old Fox said only, "You bring ghosts to firelight." Talon replied, "Then let the fire judge." There was no vote. Only silence. A small shelter at the edge of the circle was offered, barely a roof, mostly shadow. Talon stood watch outside that night. He did not speak to them, but he did not leave either. The fire near the center of camp burned low. Its embers cracked gently like old bones settling into sleep. In the shelter, the pale woman lay on her side, eyes wide in the dark. The darker one hummed a tune that trembled more than it carried. Talon sat with his back against a rock, arms folded, his eyes never closing. Not for the danger, but for the weight of what he'd carried back. Not just two women from the dust, but something else. Something he hadn't named in 3 winters. And so the desert, that silent thing, had broken its stillness not with thunder or horses, but with the soft gasp of a woman breathing again, and a man choosing to stay when he could have ridden past. There was no gunfire, no blood. Just mercy. And mercy, they would learn, comes with its own kind of storm. The morning after their arrival, the women were given no greeting, only a silence carved so sharp it could bleed. The small shelter, patched from hide and branches, barely held back the wind. Cora woke first, lips cracked, fingers still clutching the sketchbook she'd held through the desert. Her hair, once tucked in neat plaits, was now knotted and streaked with dust. Willa, curled behind her, opened her eyes without moving. She had not slept much, and even now, her gaze scanned the camp through the narrow slit in the hide wall. The village was awake. They could hear it, metal pots clanking, horses snorting, the scratch of fire being coaxed from cold ash. But no one approached. No one called them for food or water. Even the dogs stayed distant. Talon brought water just before sunrise, placing the clay bowl outside their shelter. He said nothing. When Willa looked at him, just looked, he returned her gaze without blinking. Then he walked away. The water was clean. Cold. They drank it in turns, careful not to spill a drop. Old Fox spoke with Talon that morning by the council fire, his voice a low bird that rose and fell like the rumble of a coming storm. Talon's shoulders remained squared, his eyes on the smoke curling from the embers. The elder's voice, though measured, carried weight. "She is white. The other darker, but not ours. You bring 2 strangers, one sick and one silent, and expect the land to open for them?" Talon didn't flinch. "I expect nothing. But the land opened for me once. When I was worse." Old Fox studied him for a long time, then spat into the dust. "Mercy is never free." Willa and Cora began walking the camp's edge after noon. Willa limped slightly, but she kept her back straight. Cora followed, her eyes lowered. She clutched her sketchbook like a shield. The children were the first to notice. One small boy tossed a stone that landed near Cora's feet. She stopped. Willa turned, her face carved from stone. The boy ran. Later, she Prairie passed by, her braids heavy with feathers, her voice loud enough to carry, "They eat and bring no meat. They drink and bring no song." Willa said nothing. Cora's eyes shimmered, but she looked away, biting her lip so hard it left blood. Talon watched from afar. That evening, Willa tried to offer help. She approached a woman stirring a pot of beans and motioned, wordlessly, to take over. The woman lifted her spoon, pointed it to the dirt, and turned her back. So Willa found a patch of hard earth near their shelter and began smoothing it with a flat stone. She worked until dusk, clearing the brambles and pebbles, her breath steady, face unreadable. Cora sat nearby, sketching something in the dirt with a twig, 2 birds in flight, their wings incomplete. Talon brought them cornmeal at nightfall, wrapped in cloth. He didn't hand it over, just left it by the door. Willa nodded once. Cora didn't lift her eyes. The moon that night was white and pale, casting silver light across the dry brush and sleeping village. Talon stood watch again. He did not have to. No one asked him. But he did. Inside, Willa hummed softly. A song Cora didn't know. Not English. Not Apache. Something older. Her voice was low, a kind of prayer carved in sound. And in that moonlight, Cora reached out and gently took Willa's hand. It was not fear that kept them together. It was what they had survived. By the third day, Cora tried to help too. She joined the other women by the goats, kneeling to untangle the tether ropes. Her hands were delicate, not built for the calluses of labor, but she did not complain. She only flinched when the goat bleated sharply beside her, startling her into silence. A girl, maybe 12, stood nearby. She watched Cora with a mix of disgust and curiosity. "Do you even know how to bleed a thing?" the girl asked in Apache. Cora didn't understand, but she heard the tone. The girl spat in the dirt and walked away. Willa saw. That night, Talon found a drawing at the edge of his sleeping mat. It was a fox curled beside a hawk, both with their eyes closed, but feathers scattered between them like snow. He looked around. No one was near. He did not ask questions. Instead, he wrapped it in oilskin and tucked it beside his knife. Cora never asked if he saw it. She only watched him a little longer the next morning when he handed her water. Later that day, Talon knelt by the river with Old Fox, washing a deer hide in silence. The elder finally spoke, slow and heavy, "You cannot carry them forever." "I'm not carrying," Talon said. "They walk." Old Fox dipped the hide, then wrung it tight. "But where to?" At sunset, Cora came to him. She waited by the edge of his tent. Not inside. Not too close. Her hands trembled, but she stood straight. She offered a folded paper. A drawing of the camp tents, horses, fire, and in the far corner, 2 women standing under shadow. Half there. Half faded. "You see us," she said quietly, "but not all the way." Talon looked at the paper. Then at her. "Then stand where I can." Her breath caught, but she nodded. She did not smile. Just nodded. She stayed a moment longer, then left. That night, Willa collapsed. Her body, finally given safety, betrayed her. Fever took her quick, sweat soaking her shift, her skin hot to the touch. Cora screamed for help. No one came. Talon came. He lifted Willa like she weighed nothing, carried her to the healer's tent. But the healer stood at the door and blocked the way. "She is not ours," the old woman said. "She could carry death." "She carries more than that," Talon replied. "She carries you, then," the healer answered and turned away. Talon walked to the river. He knelt in the shallows, setting Willa down with care. Cora followed, holding a cloth and bowl. Together, in silence, they bathed her skin, poured cool water over her brow, and whispered broken prayers into the dark. Willa's breath shivered. Talon looked up at the stars, then at Cora, who pressed her forehead against Willa's chest, tears wetting her gown. "Don't leave," she whispered. "Not now. Not after all this." Talon laid a hand on her back, just once. He did not speak. But the gesture was steadier than any words could have been. And as the river murmured around their knees, something shifted, not in the village, not yet, but in them. A stillness that no longer meant silence. A stillness that meant staying. And far beyond them, the firelight flickered, casting their shadows long across the water's edge. They did not blink. Not anymore. The wind had grown gentler in the past few days, but the village's air remained cold. Even after Willa's fever broke. Even after Talon and Cora had kept her alive through nights of cold compresses, broth, and the hush of shared silence. Life resumed its rhythm, but around them, not with them. Each morning, Cora walked to the edge of the bluffs and sat with her sketchbook in her lap. She never drew openly. She kept the pages turned in, her hand shielding lines as if the paper carried something too private to name. She was quieter now, not out of fear, but as if the act of being seen too much might undo her. Willa, thin but recovering, rose early, smoothed her hair with a damp cloth, and folded their bedding with military precision. She did not ask to help, she simply started. Gathering firewood. Fetching water. Repairing a broken stool outside the goat shed with nothing but twine and will. Still, eyes followed them wherever they walked. The women who braided their daughters' hair turned their backs as they passed. Men watched with narrowed suspicion. The fire refused to catch. One afternoon, Cora tried to join the weaving circle. She sat at the edge, quietly mimicking the over-under motion of the elder women's hands. She wasn't clumsy, just unfamiliar. Her fingers trembled as she worked the thin strands of yucca. A child sneezed. A woman beside Cora murmured something sharp in Apache. Another laughed. Cora did not respond. She placed the half-woven mat down gently, stood, and walked away. Willa watched from the goat pen, her jaw clenched. When Cora reached her, she handed her a canteen and said only, "They will not thank you for bleeding." That evening, a boy brought Talon a deer hide. "From the East Ridge," he said, then lowered his voice. "The white one went there. Alone. She shouldn't be walking far." Talon said nothing. But his hand tightened around the hide. The sun dipped low behind the hills, casting gold through the lodgepoles. Cora had not returned. He found her just before twilight, sitting in the hollowed bowl of a sandstone ridge. She had drawn the canyon, the village in the far distance, and herself, small, indistinct, near the bottom edge of the page. When she saw him, she didn't startle. "I thought if I drew myself smaller," she said softly, "they'd stop noticing me." Talon sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. He didn't ask questions. He just waited. After a long silence, she whispered, "They see our skin first." "Yours." "Mine." "Willa's." "That's the order of things. No matter how quiet we are." Talon nodded once. "They also see what we carry." Cora's voice was brittle. "What do they think I carry?" "Storms," he said. "Or sorrow." She exhaled a soft laugh, thin as parchment. "They're not wrong." The sky shifted above them, stars beginning to freckle the blue. Cora leaned forward, her elbows on her knees. "When we left, we didn't know where we were going. We just kept walking. Willa said, maybe the earth will forget our names if we walk far enough. But it didn't. It remembered. It punished." Talon looked at her. "It's remembering something else now." She turned to him, eyes rimmed red but steady. "What?" "You," he said. "Alive." They sat in silence as the dusk wrapped around them like a shawl. He walked her back under the stars, and this time, she did not look at the ground. In camp, Willa stirred a pot over their small fire. The broth was thin but warm. She handed Cora a bowl without a word. Talon sat beside them, cross-legged, his rifle leaning against a stump. Across the clearing, Old Fox sat beneath a juniper tree. His eyes, old and unblinking, never left the fire. Later that night, Willa sang again. Her voice was steadier now, low and rich, like earth after rain. It was a hymn deep southern roots, dragged across rivers and through sorrow. Some words were swallowed by the wind. Others clung. One by one, figures gathered just beyond the shadows. A few women. 2 boys. 1 elder. No one spoke. No one dared join. But they listened. It was the first time the camp had heard music in weeks. When Willa finished, she did not bow. She simply wrapped herself in her blanket and lay down. The listeners melted back into the dark. The next morning, Talon brought a bundle of corn to their shelter. He handed it to Cora. "Teacher," he said, nodding at Willa. She blinked. "You want me to teach her to grind?" He nodded. "It's slower that way." "Good." Cora turned to Willa, who raised an eyebrow but shrugged. "All right," Willa said. "But I ain't singing to no grain." They worked together in the quiet, crushing kernels with rhythm. Dust rose in soft clouds. Cora sneezed once. Willa chuckled. Somewhere behind them, a woman peeked from her tent. That afternoon, She Prairie stood near the central fire and spoke loud enough for all to hear. They earned pity with sickness. Next will be marriage, and then what? Have children at our fires? They do not belong. Talon stood across from her, arms folded. She's already here, he said, his voice calm. And still the sun rises. Whispers stirred. The camp did not speak in unison. But they did not rise in anger either. Later, Cora approached She Prairie's tent with a folded cloth. Inside was a drawing, She Prairie with her child, the two of them sitting beside a stream. Cora did not wait to explain. She just left it there, then returned to the fire. She Prairie found it that evening. She did not speak of it. But she did not speak against Cora the next day, either. Small things. Quiet things. Not enough to thaw the ice, but enough to make it crack. The next night, Willa brought a reed basket to an old woman who carved beads. She laid it down silently, filled with goat hair they'd brushed and collected. Soft, clean, strong. The old woman glanced up. Said nothing. Took the basket. That was all. Cora sat beside Talon by the fire that night, closer now. Her knee brushed his and didn't pull away. She held her sketchbook open, not hiding it anymore. One page showed Talon with his daughter, drawn only from memory. The girl's face was delicate, tucked beneath a fur wrap. The father's eyes were shaded, hollowed. Talon looked at it for a long time. Then he said, she liked blue. Cora nodded. I'll find it. You won't, he said softly. There's no blue in this land. She didn't argue. She simply touched the drawing gently, her fingertips ghosting over the child's hair. I can still try, she whispered. Willa came and sat beside them. Her face was tired, but her eyes bright. We still breathing? Talon nodded. Cora smiled. Willa leaned back and looked at the fire. It's catching, she said. And it was. Not fast. Not in flames. But in embers. Glowing. Quiet. Refusing to die. Rain had not touched the land in weeks, but that morning, the river murmured like it knew something no one else did. The women were up before dawn, Willa mending the hem of a shirt, Cora sketching in the sand with her fingertip. Her drawing was simple, a bird flying, wings uneven, sky unfinished. She didn't smile at it. She just stared, like it was a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. Across the clearing, Talon chopped wood. His arms moved in rhythm, silent, focused, deliberate. Willa watched him once, only once, before returning to her sewing. That morning passed without incident. No whispers. No stones. No stares. Which is why the silence, when it came, felt heavier than before. Cora had gone alone to the forest. She wanted bark for ink, she said. And maybe solitude. She told Willa she'd be back by midday. She didn't come back. By the time the sun stood overhead, the camp had shifted. Children were pulled closer. Men returned with half-full quivers. Willa stood near the fire, her shoulders squared, hands twitching at her sides. She doesn't know the paths, she said aloud. She could be lost. Old Fox replied without rising. Or she went further than you thought. Willa stepped forward. She went with no weapon. Another voice spoke from behind, a boy, no more than 10, blood running down the side of his temple. He had run all the way from the North Trail. I saw her, he gasped. White men, 3, took her. Tied her hands. They were laughing. Willa didn't wait for permission. She moved, fast, toward the horse lines. Talon was already saddling his mount. Old Fox stepped between them. You will bring fire to our walls, he warned. I'll bring her back, Talon replied. That's all. He didn't shout. He didn't plead. He rode out before they could decide whether to bless or forbid. The trail was thin, hard to read beneath hoof prints and broken grass. But the boy had pointed true, and Talon followed the thread north toward the canyon. The cliffs narrowed, pinched like a closing hand. Shadows crawled along the ridges. A hawk circled overhead, just once, then disappeared. Talon dismounted where the trail ended. From there, he moved on foot, knife at his hip, bow across his back, rifle in hand. He found them by the ravine. 3 white men, rough-faced and loud, sat around a fire. Cora was tied to a wagon axle, wrists bound, mouth bloodied. Her sketchbook was torn, pages crumpled, and flung near the fire like garbage. One man slapped her again, laughing. "Pretty things got sharp eyes," he sneered. "Shame we'll have to put them out." Talon watched from behind the rocks. He did not breathe. He did not speak. He moved. The first man didn't hear the arrow until it bloomed from his chest. His body buckled like a puppet with cut strings. The second turned too slow. A knife found his throat. The third ran. Talon let him. Cora sat shaking, the rope cutting red into her skin. Her breath came in shudders. Talon knelt, took her hands, and cut the bonds clean. Her fingers remained clenched even after the rope was gone. He touched her face, gently turning it toward him. "You're safe now," he said, his voice low, even. She nodded, barely. Her eyes didn't leave his. Then, finally, her body collapsed into his arms. He held her. Not like a lover. Not like a savior. Like something lost that had finally been found. When they returned to the camp near dusk, Willa ran to them, her face unreadable. Cora fell into her arms, and Willa clutched her so tightly the air left her lungs. No one stopped them. No one asked. Later that night, Talon walked alone to the river. He sat at the bend where the water bent sharp around the rocks, where the reeds grew thick. He lit no fire. He spoke to the stars. And to the grave beneath them. "My child," he whispered, "you taught me to carry the quiet. But I think now I must carry the noise, too." Behind him, a footstep. Cora. She didn't speak. She didn't sit. She laid something beside him, a new sketch. It showed the canyon again, but this time, she stood at the center. No longer faded. "I don't know who I am here," she said. Talon didn't answer for a long time. Then, alive. Still. "That's enough." She sat beside him. Willa joined soon after, arms crossed, not speaking. The 3 of them sat by the river as it murmured its secrets past their feet. The stars blinked above them. And somewhere in the darkness, the fire finally caught. The morning after Cora's return, the camp felt different. Not louder. Not kinder. But still, something had shifted. Like the hush after lightning splits the sky, when everyone waits to see if the world is still standing. Smoke rose from early fires. A pot clanged. Somewhere a dog barked once and then fell quiet again. Willa stepped out of the shelter first. She moved slower these days, her strength not yet fully restored, but her eyes were sharper than ever. She stood like someone expecting confrontation and prepared to meet it. Cora followed. She wore a blanket wrapped tight around her shoulders, her hair tangled but her chin lifted. In one hand, she held her sketchbook. In the other, the small leather pouch she had once used to carry ink bark. Together, they walked to the fire circle. Talon was already there. His arms folded, his eyes calm. Old Fox sat nearby, legs crossed, staff in his lap like a weapon that had not needed to strike in years. She Prairie appeared last, flanked by 2 women with braided hair and wary eyes. Children peered from behind skirts. A hush gathered like dry leaves ready to catch flame. Old Fox lifted his gaze to Cora. "Your blood was nearly spilled," he said. "And still you stand here." "I do," Cora said softly, not trembling. "Because I was worth finding." The silence cracked. She Prairie's eyes narrowed. You bring strangers, illness, and death. One man is dead. One escaped. What happens when he returns with more? Talon stepped forward. Then we meet him. Together. She Prairie spat in the dust. They are not ours. Willa stepped into the firelight. Her voice didn't rise, it landed. I carried scars to this place. Not from disease or shame. From men like him. From years of silence. I didn't ask to stay here. But this land, your land, let me breathe. And this woman, she nodded to Cora, carried me through when I couldn't walk. She paused. Then looked to She Prairie. You say we don't belong? Fine. Then don't feed us. Don't protect us. Don't look at us. But don't pretend we haven't tried to give back. She reached into her shawl and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. A bead necklace. Simple. Handmade. Apache pattern. Goat hair thread. I made it, Willa said. From your style. Your tradition. I watched. I learned. Not to steal, but to honor. She Prairie didn't speak. Her hand twitched once, but she didn't reach. Cora stepped forward, holding her sketchbook open. She turned page after page. Portraits of the village women. Braiding hair. Laughing. Nursing children. Sitting in sunlight. None of them mocked. None exaggerated. Just truth, captured with reverence. You called me ghost, Cora said. But I saw you. She stopped on the last page. Old Fox, sitting by the river, his reflection drawn beneath him. I saw all of you. Old Fox rose. He looked from Cora to Willa to Talon, then down at the fire. We have buried sons, he said, and welcomed storms. We have fought the bluecoats, the broken treaties, the winters without meat. But we never buried our hearts. Not fully. He reached for Cora's sketchbook. Held it. And said, they may stay. If they wish it. Murmurs swept the camp. Some left the fire circle. Some stayed. But no one shouted. No one spit. That night, Cora sat by Talon's tent, legs folded beneath her. The sky above them glowed with 1,000 watchful stars. A breeze moved the trees gently, as if blessing what remained. I never said thank you, she whispered. Talon didn't look at her. You did. In the river. When you came back. They sat in silence. He handed her something wrapped in oilskin. Her sketch of the fox and the hawk. You kept it? I remember the silence, he said. Sometimes, I need to remember sound. Cora leaned her head on his shoulder. He didn't move. Later that week, Willa began clearing more land near the goat pen. No one asked her to. She just did. One morning, a girl came to help. Then a second. By the end of the week, a dozen hands worked the soil. They planted corn and squash. They built a fence. They sang. And Talon stood beside Cora as she painted the fence white. One brushstroke at a time. Weeks later, Cora brought a flower to the burial ground. A blue one. Wild, from a distant ridge. She placed it on a small stone, Talon's daughter's grave. She didn't speak. But Talon saw her. And nodded. In the evening, Willa danced with the children, spinning in circles as the fire crackled. Someone drummed softly with their palms against a hollowed log. Cora watched, smiling. You're not fading anymore, Talon said. I know, she replied. The fire caught. He reached for her hand. She let him. And as the wind moved through the tall grass, something bloomed, not loud, not sudden. But real. And lasting. Not every storm ends in ruin. Some leave behind wildflowers. Sometimes, what rises from ash isn't just survival. It's love. It's belonging. It's beginning. If this story touched your heart, friend, remember this. You may be a stranger to the world, but you are never a stranger to grace. Let your kindness be the fire that catches. And from the ashes, may something beautiful bloom.